When you check into a hotel, everything seems so seamless.
Right.
But have you ever stopped to think about just how much behind-the-scenes work and legal framework goes into making that happen?
Yeah, like what kind of rules do you imagine are even in place?
Exactly. To define what a hotel even is and how it should operate.
It's actually quite eye-opening when you delve into it. What's fascinating is the incredible level of detail involved, just to ensure a smooth and safe experience for travelers.
It really is.
It's all about creating a structure that supports both the guests and, the people running the hotels.
Absolutely. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. We've got a hold of a fascinating piece of legislation, the Hotel Act of Thailand, BE 2547. So that's 2004.
Right. Maybe not your typical beach read, huh?
Probably not. But it's basically the bedrock of the hotel industry there. So our mission today is to really understand what makes this law tick. We want to explore its core components, from who needs a license to the actual responsibilities of hotel owners and managers, and even what happens if things don't go according to plan.
And it really shows, how seriously a country takes its tourism, trying to balance the economic side with, visitor safety and well-being. That's crucial.
Okay, so let's kick things off with the very foundation. What legally counts as a hotel in Thailand? Section 4 of this act gives us the definition.
Right.
It's basically any place set up to offer temporary rooms to travelers or, anyone else in exchange for money. Seems pretty straightforward, doesn't it?
It does on the surface, yeah.
Yeah.
But the exceptions are really where it gets interesting.
Like what?
Well, the law specifically excludes accommodations offered by government bodies, charities, or educational institutions if they aren't run for profit,
Okay, that makes sense.
And it also doesn't cover places offering monthly rentals or longer stays, or any other specific types of accommodation that might be outlined in separate, more detailed rules. They call those ministerial regulations.
Right, so it's a more targeted approach then, not just a blanket definition covering everything.
Mm-hmm.
A charity shelter, for example, wouldn't fall under these exact hotel rules.
Exactly. It gives you an initial glimpse into the specific focus here.
Okay. Now, who's the main body overseeing all of this? There must be some kind of authority.
Yeah, that takes us to Chapter 1. They establish the Committee for Promotion and Supervision of Hotel Business.
Sounds official.
It is. And what stands out here is the high-powered group of people on this committee. It's chaired by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Interior.
Okay.
But it also includes representatives from key organizations like the Board of Investment, the Royal Thai Police, the Tourism Authority of Thailand, and even qualified folks from the private hotel sector itself.
Wow, that's quite a diverse and influential group. It suggests a really sort of joined-up way of looking at the whole hotel sector.
Definitely.
So what kind of authority, what responsibilities does this committee actually hold?
Their main role is really guidance and oversight. They make recommendations for those more detailed ministerial regulations to the minister. They handle appeals against decisions made by the registrar. We'll get to the registrar in a bit. And they also propose plans for how to generally support and, supervise the hotel business.
So they're like the high-level strategists for the whole system.
Pretty much, yeah. Setting the framework.
Okay, so the committee sets the overall direction. But who handles the nitty-gritty implementation, making sure everyone's actually following the rules? That sounds like this registrar person you mentioned, especially for actually operating a hotel.
Precisely. Chapter 2 gets into the critical issue of licensing. And Section 15 is crystal clear on this. If you want to run a hotel in Thailand, you absolutely must have a license from the registrar.
Right. Non-negotiable.
Not optional in any way.
And getting that license, it's not just a formality, is it? Section 13 tells us that the minister, based on what the committee advises, can issue these ministerial regulations. The specifics.
Exactly. And these cover a whole range of things. Where a hotel can be located, how big it can be, the types of facilities it needs, the general standards.
Quite detailed.
Very. And what's interesting is that these rules can even be different depending on the type of hotel and where in Thailand it is.
So there's some flexibility built in.
That flexibility is really important, yeah. The requirements for, say, a small family-run guest house up in the mountains might be very different from a huge international chain hotel in Bangkok.
Makes sense.
The law recognizes those different contexts. Also crucial is Section 14. It actually allows for designating no license zones.
Really? Why?
if there are concerns about, like, public order, morality, or environmental protection. But importantly, businesses that already had a license before such a zone was declared are protected.
Ah, okay. You can't just pull the rug out from under established legitimate businesses.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Now, who is actually eligible to apply for one of these licenses? There must be some criteria.
Definitely. Section 16 lays out the qualifications and also reasons why someone might be prohibited. You need to be at least 20 years old, legally reside in Thailand.
Standard stuff.
Yeah, and you can't be bankrupt, declared legally incompetent, or have a serious criminal record. And notably, there are specific prohibitions related to sex offenses, drug offenses, and human trafficking.
Okay, important safeguards.
And these same rules apply to the key people and partnerships or companies applying for a license, too.
Got it. So what about the actual process? How does applying for a license work?
Section 17 outlines that. And what's interesting is you can actually apply for your hotel license and any other necessary permits, like maybe building permits or something, at the same time through the registrar.
Oh, that's handy.
Yeah, the registrar checks if your application is complete and then sends off the other permit applications to the relevant government departments. It sounds like they've tried to make this as efficient as possible.
It sounds like a welcome bit of streamlining, definitely.
Yeah.
And once you've submitted your application, what happens next?
Well, according to Section 18, the registrar can grant you a license if they believe that, your hotel's location, size, facilities, standards, all that stuff meets the requirements set out in those ministerial regulations we talked about. They have a 30-day window to let you know their decision, yes or no. And if they reject you, they have to tell you why.
Fair enough. And how long does the license last?
Then Section 19 specifies that a license is specific to the hotel named on it, and it's valid for 5 years from the date it's issued.
5 years, so not permanent. You'll need to renew it.
Exactly.
But before we get to renewals, there are a couple of interesting points about the hotel itself. Section 20 deals with the name.
Ah, yes, the name.
It has to be clearly displayed in Thai, apparently. You can use foreign alphabets if you want, but there are restrictions, right?
Yeah, you can't have a name that sounds like a royal name or is the same or very similar to an existing hotel name without their permission. And naturally, it can't be vulgar or offensive.
Pretty standard business naming rules, I guess. Prevent confusion, maintain respect.
Exactly. And speaking of the business, Section 21 covers license renewal. You need to apply for renewal before your current license runs out.
Right.
If you do that on time, you're considered to be still licensed while they make a decision on your renewal.
Okay, but what happens if you miss the renewal deadline by just a bit? Life happens.
The law does have some flexibility there. If you apply within 60 days after your license expires, it's still treated as a renewal, but you will have to pay a penalty fee, a late fee, basically.
Ah, okay.
However, if you wait longer than those 60 days, then it's considered a completely new license application. Start from scratch.
Oof. So there's definitely a strong incentive to renew on time.
For sure.
Okay, so you've got your license, your hotel has a respectable name, you're keeping up with renewals. What happens if you want to make some changes to your business, or maybe you decide to close down altogether?
Chapter 2 also addresses these situations in sections 22 through 29. If you want to change the category of your hotel or significantly alter the number of rooms in a way that affects the building's structure, or even just change the hotel's name, you need to get permission from the registrar first. Same goes, if your license gets lost or damaged, you need to apply for a replacement.
Okay. What about if you want to sell the hotel or pass it on to someone else? Is that allowed?
Yes. Section 24 allows for transferring a license, but again, you need the registrar's approval.
Of course.
And the person you're transferring it to has to meet all those same qualifications and not be subject to any prohibitions we talked about earlier. They have to be eligible themselves.
Makes sense. And what if, sadly, the hotel operator passes away?
Section 25 covers that scenario. In that case, their heir can apply to take over the license within 180 days, as long as they meet the necessary qualifications.
Okay.
And if they do, they can actually continue running the business while the application is being processed.
That seems like a practical measure, yeah. To ensure continuity. What about when a business entity, like a partnership or a company, is dissolved?
Section 26 is pretty clear. In those cases, the hotel license automatically expires on the date the business is legally dissolved.
Okay, go on.
And if a hotel operator just wants to stop running their business, even if their license is still valid, Section 27 requires them to notify the registrar at least 15 days in advance.
Why the notice?
Well, the registrar can then set conditions for this cessation, especially to make sure any guests currently staying at the hotel are taken care of. That they're not left high and dry.
Right, that's considerate, making sure travelers aren't suddenly left without accommodation. Good point. And what if something unexpected happens, like a fire or some other disaster?
Section 28 covers that. If a hotel is damaged by fire or another serious danger, the operator or the manager has to inform the registrar within 15 days. The registrar can then order the operator to fix the situation within a specific time frame and might even temporarily close the hotel, or a part of it, until the problems are resolved.
Right.
And if the damage is so severe that it just can't be repaired, the license expires immediately.
Wow, okay. So we've talked about getting a license, the rules around the hotel itself.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to who is actually in charge of running the hotel day to day. That's where Chapter 3 and this idea of hotel management come in, right?
Exactly. Section 30 makes it mandatory for every hotel business to have a manager, although the owner and the manager can be the same person. That's allowed.
Okay.
Section 31 then says that anyone appointed as a manager has to meet certain qualifications and not be subject to any prohibitions. These are detailed later in Section 33, and their appointment has to be officially reported to the registrar.
So similar to the operator needing a license.
Sort of. If everything is in order, the registrar issues what's called a notification receipt, and that person can then act as the hotel manager.
So just like the hotel operator, the manager has to meet specific criteria. What are some of those qualifications and prohibitions mentioned in Section 23? Are they the same?
They're pretty similar, yeah. Being at least 20 years old, having a certificate or relevant experience, the committee determines what counts as relevant experience.
Okay.
Not having issues with chronic alcoholism, drug addiction, or certain contagious diseases, and again, no history of serious criminal convictions, similar to the license applicant.
Right.
There are also restrictions if their manager notification has been previously revoked for specific reasons. It's all about ensuring a level of competence and, well, trustworthiness.
That makes perfect sense. You want qualified and responsible people overseeing things day to day.
Yeah.
What happens if the manager is temporarily unavailable, like they get sick or go on vacation?
Section 32 allows for appointing a temporary manager for up to 90 days if the regular manager can't do their job for more than a week. The owner or another qualified person can step in, but they have to inform the registrar within 3 days. There are also rules for permanently replacing a manager, giving the owner a 7-day window to find a new qualified person.
Got it. Now, what exactly are the duties and responsibilities of the hotel operator and the manager? It sounds like some of these are shared.
That's right. Section 34 outlines the shared duties. This is quite a list.
Okay, let's hear it.
Things like clearly displaying the hotel's name, the license, room numbers, and the rates for accommodation. They also need to have fire escape plans and emergency exit signs visible.
Crucial safety stuff.
Absolutely. Displaying information about the hotel's limited liability under the Civil and Commercial Code. Maintaining proper hygiene and sanitation according to public health laws. Making sure the building is secure and has a fire prevention system. Maintaining environmental quality standards, and providing assistance to guests in emergencies like fires or floods.
Wow, that's a pretty extensive list.
Yeah.
Covers everything from safety to just making sure guests have the basic info they need.
Yeah, it's comprehensive, covering safety, information, and basic guest welfare.
Okay. What are some of the specific duties that fall solely on the manager?
Section 35 focuses on a very important task. The manager has to immediately record guest information when they check in.
Immediately.
Yep. Have the guest sign a registration card, and they have to countersign if the guest is a minor, and then enter this information into a guest registry within 24 hours.
And keep these records.
Yes, these records need to be kept for at least a year and must be readily available for inspection. And Section 36 also requires the manager to send copies of the daily guest registrations to the registrar every week.
Every week. Wow. That record keeping seems crucial for various reasons, I imagine.
Definitely. Security, tracking.
That guest registration requirement does sound really important for security, yeah.
Yeah.
And being able to track who is staying where. Section 38 also touches on this security aspect, doesn't it?
Yes, that section emphasizes the manager's responsibility to prevent the hotel from being used to hide criminals or to cause public disorder. And they have to immediately report any suspicions to the local authorities. So, quite a bit of responsibility there.
Yeah, definitely.
And finally, Section 39 outlines specific reasons why a manager may refuse to admit a guest,
Okay, like what?
such as if they suspect illegal activity, or if the person clearly can't pay, if they have a dangerous, contagious disease, or for other reasonable causes determined by the committee.
All right.
And if someone with a contagious disease is admitted, the manager is also required to inform public health officials. So it's a balancing act, isn't it, between welcoming guests and maintaining a safe, orderly environment.
So there's a clear line drawn between hospitality and, well, responsibility. Okay, now what happens if a hotel operator or manager isn't following all these rules? That brings us to Chapter 4 on control and appeal.
Right. Section 40 gives the registrar the authority to order the cessation or correction of any violations, whether it's violating the act itself, the regulations, or any orders issued under it.
So they can tell them to stop or fix it.
Exactly. If the violation isn't fixed, the registrar can issue a written warning. If that's ignored, they can even suspend a hotel operator's license for up to 15 days at a time.
15 days.
Yeah, with a limit of 4 suspensions in total. For managers, repeated noncompliance can lead to further written warnings.
And what about the guests during a suspension?
Good point. Importantly, during a license suspension, the hotel can't operate, and the registrar can require the operator to find alternative accommodation for any existing guests.
Okay, so guests are protected.
Yeah, it's about ensuring compliance, but also protecting guests.
What about more serious or repeated offenses? What kind of consequences are there for those? Suspension seems temporary.
Section 41 deals with those tougher situations. If an operator or manager actually loses their qualifications or repeatedly violates the act even after warnings or suspensions, or, and this is serious, uses the hotel for major criminal activities like sex offenses, drug trafficking, or human trafficking, the registrar has the power to revoke their license or manager notification altogether.
Revoke. Okay, that's serious.
Very. And in these more severe cases, a prior written warning might not even be necessary. And if the operator and manager are the same person involved in these activities, both their license and manager status can be revoked at the same time.
Wow. Okay. What's the process for these suspensions or revocations? How are people informed? And do they have any way to challenge the decision?
Section 42 states that any order to suspend or revoke has to be in writing and sent by registered mail with confirmation of receipt to the hotel.
Formal notification.
Yes. The operator or manager is considered to have been notified 7 days after the mailing date, unless they can prove they got it later. And Section 43 provides the right to appeal the registrar's orders to the committee, that high-level committee we talked about earlier.
Okay, so there's an appeal route.
Yes, within 15 days of receiving the notification. The committee then has 45 days to make a final decision. But interestingly, in cases involving those serious criminal offenses, filing an appeal doesn't automatically put the registrar's order on hold. The suspension or revocation can still take effect while the appeal is heard.
Okay, so there's a system for checks and balances, but it doesn't stop action in very serious cases.
Got it.
And within this chapter, Section 44 mentions an annual fee for running a hotel.
Yes, that's right. Hotel operators have to pay this annual fee, and the amount is based on the number of rooms the hotel has.
Makes sense.
If they pay late, they incur a surcharge. And if the fee and surcharge remain unpaid without a valid reason, the registrar can actually suspend the hotel's license until the full amount is paid.
So paying your fees is pretty critical to keeping your license active.
Absolutely. It's a key part of maintaining your operating status.
Okay, moving on to Chapter 5, we have competent officials. Who are these individuals and what kind of authority do they have? Sounds important.
Section 45 explains that these competent officials are appointed in writing by the registrar. They can include commissioned police officers and certain civil and local government officials.
And what can they do?
They have the authority to enter and inspect hotels during daylight hours for various reasons, checking licenses, guest registrations, the overall condition of the hotel, that sort of thing.
Right. Inspections.
They can also inspect staff records during working hours. And if an inspection can't be finished during the day, it can continue at night under specific circumstances, like if it's almost done or if there's suspicion someone's messing with documents.
Okay.
They also have the power to summon hotel operators, managers, or staff to provide information or submit relevant documents. But importantly, Section 46 requires these officials to show their identification and the written authorization from the registrar when they're carrying out their duties.
Right. They can't just show up unannounced without credentials.
Exactly. Accountability on both sides.
It's important to have designated people with the authority to make sure everyone is following the rules and maintaining standards. Now, what are the actual consequences for breaking this law? Chapter 6 deals with penalties.
That's right. And Section 48 clarifies something important first. If a company or other legal entity commits an offense, the managing director or whoever is actually responsible for the hotel's operation can also be held accountable.
Ah, so personal liability too.
Potentially, yes. Then, Part 2 of this chapter details the administrative fines for various violations. For instance, making certain changes to the hotel, like its category or number of rooms, without permission. That can result in a significant fine, plus an additional daily fine if the violation continues.
Ouch. Daily fines add up.
They sure do. Not informing the registrar about ceasing business or damage to the hotel also carries administrative fines. There are specific fine amounts for not complying with various duties related to hotel management and guest registration, too.
Okay, so fines for procedural stuff and non-compliance. What about more serious things?
Then Part 3 outlines the criminal penalties. These can include imprisonment, fines, or both.
Imprisonment? Wow. For what?
For more serious offenses like operating without a license or failing to notify the registrar about appointing a manager. Providing false information in the guest registration or obstructing those competent officials during an inspection also carries criminal penalties.
Okay.
So there are definitely different levels of consequences depending on how serious the infraction is. Administrative fines for some things, potential criminal charges for others.
So both administrative and criminal measures are in place to ensure compliance. Makes sense. Finally, Chapter 7 contains transitory provisions in sections 62 through 66. These usually deal with how a new law is implemented when there was an older one, right? Smoothing the transition.
Exactly that. Section 62 essentially grandfathered in licenses that were issued under the old Hotel Act, which was way back from 1935. Those old licenses were valid until their original expiration dates.
Okay, so existing businesses weren't immediately shut down.
Right. Then Section 63 required existing hotel operators who apply for a new license under this 2004 Act within a year of the new, more detailed ministerial regulations coming into effect. But they were allowed to continue operating while they applied.
Okay, a grace period.
Yeah, and importantly, some of the new requirements, particularly those related to parking and location, didn't apply to these existing hotels that were being grandfathered in.
Easing them into the new system.
Exactly. Similarly, Section 64 allowed existing hotel managers to maintain their status just by notifying the registrar within 30 days of the new act taking effect. And they were temporarily exempt from some of the new certification requirements.
Same principle for managers.
Yep. Section 65 just clarified that any license applications that were still pending or had been approved under the old law would be considered under the new one. And finally, Section 66 stated that the existing ministerial regulations under the old act would remain in force for up to a year after the new act came into effect, unless they were replaced by new regulations sooner. It was all about making that transition to the new legal framework as smooth as possible for everyone involved.
So it was a carefully managed shift from the old rules to the new ones. Looking back at everything we've discussed, it's clear that the Hotel Act of Thailand is, well, a really comprehensive piece of law.
It really is. What's truly fascinating, I think, is just how meticulously it tries to cover almost every single aspect of running a hotel, from the initial licensing stages right through to the daily responsibilities of management and, the potential repercussions of not following the rules.
Yeah.
It really highlights the significance that the Thai government places on maintaining certain standards of safety, order, and service within its very important tourism and hospitality sector.
Absolutely. And hopefully this deep dive has given you, our listener, a much deeper appreciation for the often unseen structures and regulations that are at work every single time you book a hotel room, well, certainly in Thailand. It's definitely a lot more involved than just clicking reserve online, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely more to it. And maybe this raises a really interesting point for you to consider. Given just how detailed this act is, what specific parts of it surprised you the most? What does this level of regulation tell you about the priorities of the Thai government when it comes to tourism and hospitality? And maybe what further questions does this bring to mind for you about finding that balance, the balance between having necessary regulations and allowing businesses the freedom to operate effectively? Something to think about.